The apartment was so large it echoed, even with people inside it. At least that's what it felt like for Ryan. The the walls were warm, filled with lavish rugs and soft golden lights, but still she often walked barefoot in silence. It had only been 2 weeks since they got married, an arranged alliance that neither of them really asked for. Ryan, the only daughter of a retired ambassador, and Jungkook, the ruthless, charismatic CEO, whose reputation was as sharp as his suits. The marriage was arranged in nature, designed to mend fractured alliance. And while she had came into this with a flicker of romantic hope, that flicker had all but died under Jungkook's stare. He did not openly, always away, and when he was home, he barely acknowledged her unless it was for some formality or polite necessity. She was not stupid. She knew what people whispered. He did not want this marriage. She is not his type. Why would a man like John Jungkook settle for someone so ordinary? Why try to ignore them? But ignoring someone else's voice was easier than ignoring your own. So now, dressed as a soft ivory sweater and shorts that were too modest to be seductive, she curled up on the velvet armchair in the drawing room with her phone pressed to her ear. Reena, I need help, she whispered into the speaker. On the other end of call, Reena, the one person in her new life she could call a friend, paused. Help, you sound like you are asking me to bury a body. What happened? Ryan glanced toward the stair where Jungkook's room was. Still no sign of him. She turned her head back towards the fire. I don't know how do I get him to look at me like a husband? Like a man who actually sees me as his wife? Reena exhaled in a way that was both amused and sympathetic. You want to seduce your husband? Vine made a joking sound. No, I mean yes, I don't know. He's so distant. He barely looks at me, and when he looks, it likes I am a ghost walking through his hallway. Well, Reena replied, dragging out the word. That's because he's trying to be cute. Mr. John doesn't do cute. He does dangerous, obsession, possession. You have to interroge him. Vine frowned. How do I do that? Stop being so available, first of all. Don't wait for him with dinner. Don't ask him if he's eaten. Let him wonder where you are for once. Men like Jungkook hate being ignored. Vine's eyes widened, but I'm not trying to ignore him. Exactly, that's why it will work. Vine pulled the sleeve over her hand nervously. And what about dressing up? He never ever noticed what I wear. Maybe he does, he's just too proud to show it. Next time you walk past him, try something backless. Pretend it's an accident, he will notice. Reena chuckled wickedly. I have worked for him long enough to know what shuts him up in the middle of a meeting. Vian's cheeks flamed. Reena. Just saying, the man's face. But that doesn't mean he's blind. Trust me, Vian, if you really want to make him fall, you have to stop trying to please him and start being a little too of mystery. Before Vine could respond, she heard the front door open, the unmistakable heavy click of designer shoes. Jungkook was home early. Her eyes widened and she whispered into the phone. He's here, I have to go. Good luck, Reena whispered, like a war general sending her soldier to battle. And remember, backless. Later that night, Jungkook was seated on the couch, undoing his button of his cuff when Vine entered the living room with a tray of warm tea. She wore a black wrap dress. Nothing scandalous, but just long enough to tease her collarbone and just short enough to reveal her legs. When she knelt politely to offer him a cup, he did not look at her. Not at first. Thanks, he muttered. She gave him a soft smile. Long day? Jungkook's gaze flickered up briefly. He looked tired and annoyed, but something also. You don't have to ask every night, he said simply. I know. I just want to. Thus, he stood up suddenly, causing her to step back. He did not say anything, just walked past her. But he stopped briefly at the doorway, eyes narrowed slightly. The dress, he definitely noticed it. His gaze lingered, but just for a second before he turned away. Don't wait for me tonight, but she did, curled up on her side of the bed, sleep barely touching her eyes. He did not hate her, not truly, or at least she hoped. Maybe he was guarding something. But if he could hate her so much and still look at her like that half of a second, then maybe there was still something to fight for, even if she had to learn how to be the fight. Next day. It started small. The quick shift in her, John Jungkook was not the kind of man who paid attention to emotions. He was taught early by life, by power, by betrayal that emotions made you vulnerable and vulnerability made you slow, sloppy, weak. What he did not expect was her soft persistence, the way she hovered like a sunbeam, the way her voice tapped gently every time she asked, "Did you eat?" Or the way she folded his sweaters with lavender scented hands, humming quietly to herself, thinking he did not notice. He noticed. He noticed everything, and that was the problem because noticing made it real, and he was not supposed to care, so he ignored her. She stopped, no more waiting in the hall with a warm towel when he came home, no more sweet interruptions while he worked late into the night, no more soft glances over dinner like she was studying his face to learn something she had forgotten. She had withdrawn, disappeared, not physically, she was still there, still polite, still present, but now it was surface level and for some reason it bothered him. She did not ask if he had eaten today, she did not say take care when he left the house that morning. Later, now it was past midnight. The hallway was dark when he entered. Her side of the bed was already occupied. Blanket pulled to her chin, chest rising with slow, calm breaths, sleeping peacefully. Without waiting for him, it made his jaw clench for reasons he did not have the guts to name. He loosened his tie and leaned against the doorway. Just watching, it was ridiculous. This little game she had started, but somehow the silence she left behind was louder than her words. His eyes wandered. That same black wrap dress from the other night hung behind the bathroom door. He did not forget it, and the worst part, she had not been even worn it for him. She wore it like it did not matter, like she did not care if he looked, which ironically made him look even more. Jungkook raked a hand through his hair, letting out a harsh breath. What the hell was wrong with him? He would go out right now, meet someone who looked at him like they wanted to be ruined. But when they looked at him like that, it disgusted him. Because the only one who ever looked at him like he was still redeemable was now the one who had stopped looking altogether. He stood there watching her sleep. Then he turned to leave, but not before whispering under his breath, just one, "What are you playing at, sweetheart?" Next morning, the pan sizzled gently, eggs toasted, and quick hot. Vian plated the breakfast like she always did, perfectly symmetrical, light batter, the exact 2 cubes of sugar for his black coffee, but this time she just placed the food on the table and walked away. Her hair was swept to one shoulder, revealing the smooth curve of her neck, and the silk strap slipping lazily down one side, a rope that could have been modest but was not when worn so carelessly, so confidently. Did not ask how he slept, did not ask offer a smile or a gentle push to sit and eat. She sat across from him, scrolling through her phone. At the office, everything was in order. It was always in the place. Numbers, files, deadlines, people, controlled, compressed, calculated, everything except her. Jungkook adjusted the cuffs of his jacket and looked across the table. "You look a little off today, sir." He ignored her, his jaw ticked. Rina only smiled, jolting something down in her tablet. He did not know his wife and Rina were friends. He had overheard something last week, a vague mention of someone named Rina, followed by a quiet laugh. Vian barely gave anymore. He had not thought much of it, but now watching how Rina occasionally smirking during meetings, like she knew something he did not. That evening, Jungkook's on the other hand kept refilling. It did not matter. Alcohol never fogged his brain the way people expected, but it made his body warm, and it made him think of Vian, of that morning, of that robe, of how her shoulder looked too soft to ignore, of how she did not even look at him. He leaned back, drink resting loosely in hand. "Are you married, Mr. John?" one of the clients asked suddenly. "Yes." "Ah, lucky woman." He did not reply, but Rena did. "She's sweetheart." She chimed in, giving him a sideway look. "Take care of him well. Don't know if he deserves it, though." Laughter around the table. Jungkook smiled, light and unreadable. "Deserve." He was not sure about the word, but when he looked down at his glass, amber light reflecting the crystal cut, it was not the drink that blurred his thought, it was the thought of her brushing past him lately. Later that night, the door slammed. He was not swaying, he was not staggering, but he was definitely not himself. Loosened tie, wrinkled collar, and there she was, his wife, Seated on the couch, hair tied up now, skin glowing under the pale light, in a loose oversized shirt that did nothing to hide the curves beneath. You are drunk, she said softly. Jungkook did not answer. He just stared at her. Why are you dressed like that? His voice was low, hoarse. It's my house too, she replied, avoiding his eyes. You have been playing something, have not you? He said, stepping forward. This cold routine. Who told you to do it? She frowned. I don't know what you mean. You want my attention, another step closer. Then you will have it. And then his lips crashed onto hers, for desperate, possessive. His hand found her neck, then her waist, then her shoulder, and his mouth left a trail of hickeys, each one darker than the last. It was not careful, it was not romantic. It was frustrated. It was want buried under denial. It was all the things he refused to say out loud, inked onto her skin in a brushed purple. She gasped when he pulled away, but he did not let her speak. Maybe now you would not forget you are mine, he whispered, voice dark and low, and then he walked away towards the bedroom. She barely had time to breathe. Come here, he rasped, his voice rough with whiskey and something darker. Vine's heart skipped. She had seen Jungkook cold, silent, unreadable, but this Jungkook was burning from the inside, and she followed. Her steps were hesitant, her breath shallow, but her skin already tingling where his lips had touched her neck minutes ago. She entered the bedroom only to see him standing by the edge of the bed, sleeves rolled up, gaze unreadable, yet starving. Closer, he said again, voice low. When she reached him, she saw his jaw tighten. In a blink, he spun her, his arm around her waist, and the next thing she knew, she was being gently but firmly pushed onto the mattress. A gasp escaped her lips. You wanted my attention, did not you? He said, now hovering above her. His eyes were dark, his pupils blown wide, eating her whole in gaze. Wyan did not answer. His lips were parted. Jungkook did not need them. His mouth met her collarbone, then her shoulder, then the top of her chest. Every mark turned into a claim. The bed creaked beneath them. His hands were everywhere, not rushed, not rough, but possessive. She, softly, when his fingers slipped under the hem of her shirt. Let them see, he murmured, his breath hot against her neck. Let them all see whose wife you are. And then he kissed her, deep and consuming. That night he did not make love to her. He did not take her. But he left her wrecked under him, covered in traces of him. Hickey bloomed like petal down her throat, collarbone, even the side of her ribcage. When he finally collapsed behind her, Ryan could not move, not because he hurt her, but because her body did not know where he ended and she began anymore. Next morning, sunlight spilled through the cream curtains. Ryan stood, wrapped in soft sheets, her body still tingling from everything Jungkook did. She blinked. He was not in bed. She touched her neck, flinching when her fingers grazed one of the hickeys. Her eyes widened. Oh God, her neck, her chest, her ribs, her thighs. She looked like a walking map of sinful confessions. She grabbed his t-shirt from the floor and slipped into it and then padded out. The smell of coffee hit her and so did something else. Voices, loud, familiar, male voices. Her heart dropped. Into the living room, standing casually with mug of coffee in their hands, were Kim Taehyung and Park Jimin. Sitting between them, still in his black tee, was her husband. Jungkook glanced up lazily and locked eyes with her. He did not blink, he did not flinch, but his friends did. Oh Hyung, did not tell you. Had company, Jimin said with a teasing smirk. Taehyung blinked slowly, eyes roaming up to her neck and froze when he noticed the purple-red storm blooming on her skin. Jungkook leaned back on the couch, coffee in hand, smirking. She's not company, he said, gaze flickering down her body. Ryan felt the heat creep up her face. She's my wife. Jimin coughed. Taehyung tried to look at the ceiling, and Wyan wanted to sink into the floor. But Jungkook he kept looking at her like he owned the whole damned world, and maybe last night he proved that part of it was already his. Soon after the door clicked shut behind Taehyung and Jimin, laughter still echoed faintly down the hallway, but the moment it disappeared, silence settled like a blanket over the apartment. Wan stood by the window, arms folded awkwardly across her chest, still in Jungkook's shirt. He had not said much after his friends left, just cleaned up their mugs. But now, as he walked back toward the living room, she turned to him. Jungkook. He looked up, her fingers, with the hem of the t-shirt, suddenly unsure of what to say. I did not know your friends were coming, she said softly, eyes flickering to the couch where they had been sitting minutes ago. If I had, I would not have come out like that, she said. His brow quirked slightly. Why? Because I looked like that. Her hand instinctively touched her neck, her collarbone. She hesitated. Jungkook's eyes followed. The haze had not faded. If anything, they looked darker than in daylight. Proof, evidence, territory. He took a slow sip of coffee. Good, he said simply. Wyan blinked. Good? Let them see, Jungkook said, voice lower now. Let everyone see who you belong to. Her heart thudded at the word belong. You don't hate me, she said suddenly, like a whisper escaping her mouth. Before her mind could hold it in, he smiled. You have always been distant, she continued, and I tried to be your wife, but I thought. Her eyes dropped. Maybe you had me, that maybe you were forced into this silence. I did not ask for this marriage. That sentence stung, but I did not hate it either. Wyan looked up at him. I have just never been the man someone waits up for, or the man someone makes breakfast for. I don't know how to be the version of myself. So I pulled back, I stayed cold, because it was easier than letting you expect something I don't know how to give. But last night, he paused. You were not playing games. You were not begging for attention. You were just you. And it made you want to stop pretending like I don't care. You do care, she asked. I care enough to mark you. I care enough to want your skin bare and your name under my breath when I sleep. I care enough to want every man I know to see what I already know. He stepped forward now just inches from her. That you are mine. The air between them charged with something so soft yet consuming it felt like it could burn through the walls. Wine blinked, a smile threatening at the edge of her mouth, but her throat tightened with tears. And me? She asked. You. You are the only thing I have never wanted to let go of. She laughed, a small, watery sound, and threw her arms around her neck. He caught her easily, pulling her to his chest. You don't have to figure everything out now, she whispered into his shirt. I am not, he murmured into her hair. Then he pulled back, just enough to tilt her chin up and kiss her slow, deep reel. This time there was no hickeys, no games, just them, husband and wife. Not out of arrangement, not out of obligation, just because something broke through the cold and something warm, something real was beginning to bloom in its place. The end.